It's already running. We've got like a good few people in there already.
Hey, can you hear me, guys?
Hello, Neil.
Hi.
Hi, Neil. We'll just hold on for another 3 or 4 minutes, just so we can let a few more people show up, and then we will kick it off.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see anything this time.
That's because I've just muted video for the time being.
Oh, cool. Okay. No problem.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes for the last few people to show up, and then we'll kick it off. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Care Innovation Challenge webinar. I'm Ben Wilkins. I'm one of the co-founders of the Care Innovation Challenge. And the whole point tonight is to give you an overview of the care sector, of the challenges facing the care sector, and what will happen at the Care Innovation Challenge weekend itself, and to give you all the opportunity to do some Q&As at the end of the session, so you can ask us some questions that you may have about the weekend and the program overall. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share with you my screen so you can see the presentation. Brilliant. Right, you should all now be able to see my screen and the presentation and a small image of me too. So welcome to the Care Innovation Challenge. So this was set up as an accelerator for students and graduates with the passion and ambition to create solutions for challenges facing the care sector. As a group of us, there are 4 of us. So is Ashish Gorm, who's from Hallmark Care Homes and Brand Investment. Myself, I represent Wellness and Fluid Motion. Ben Allen, who is the founder and CEO of Wellness, and then Alex Ramamurthy, who is the CEO of the Care Workers Charity. And the reason we set up the Care Innovation Challenge was because there are many problems and challenges facing the sector. And as a collective of individuals, we both have a huge amount of experience and network to be able to advise and support people coming through with possible ideas and solutions. But also importantly, for the individuals, the teams, the programs that come through, it's about giving them the access to a network of care organizations. A lot of us, well, four of us have been through as entrepreneurs, working in startups, as founders. And one of the biggest challenges you have with a new idea, a new product or a service, is that leap between your prototype and getting your first contract, your first pilots out in the real world. And so we believe that between us, we are in a position to make this happen better than the majority of people in the care sector. And the reason we set this up, and the testament to that, is that the Cabinet officers have now backed the Care Innovation Challenge to make this happen. So we're first going to give you a bit of an overview of what the care sector looks like, and I want to make a distinction between the health sector and the care sector. So the health sector, sorry, I'll give you a bit of an introduction about me first of all. So I'm Ben Wilkins. I work for Wellness. I'm the head of community development. I'm the founder and clinical director of Fluid Motion that provides rehabilitation using artificial intelligence in swimming pools. I'm a postgrad at Oxford University in musculoskeletal science and a researcher. Right, back to this. So the health sector is between private hospitals, NHS hospital, and community health. So you have the classic NHS hospitals, which provides healthcare for the entire nation. About 2/3 of the people accessing NHS hospitals already are over 65. Outside of that, you have the NHS community health teams. This can be from your district nurses, your GP consortiums, providing that care outside of hospitals, which is viewed as primary care. Hospitals often provide secondary and tertiary care. And then in addition to that, you have the private hospitals. So these are the private organisations where people pay an insurance premium so they can receive private care. But this also extends to the private therapists, such as psychotherapists, physiotherapists, that work within communities throughout the UK. The differentiation into the care sector is the care sector is very much around keeping people, maintaining independence and longevity as people move into their older age. The care sector also includes people who live with a learning disability, but we're going to focus primarily on people who are the individuals who are older adults. There's definitely a crossover between both the health sector and the care sector, but the whole point of the Care Innovation Challenge is to look intensely at the care sector, because unlike the health sector, where there was a huge amount of accelerators, investment in innovation, there was a real limited appetite historically to provide accelerators, hackathons, and investment in innovation in the care sector. But the irony is the care sector is bigger than the health sector. It has more employees, it has more beds, supports more people, but has less funding and less drive in terms of innovation solving these problems. So to divide the care sector up, we have care homes, which are both nursing and residential care homes. These may be nurse-led or they may be carer-led, and provide a mixture from end-of-life and hospice care up to individuals who need respite care because they need some time for rehabilitation before they go back to live independently. You then have domiciliary care. Domiciliary care is a service where care and support workers go into older adults' homes to provide mostly personal care services, such as assistance to wash, assistance to dress, to prepare meals, to maintain and manage at home, to prompt medication. And then there's the retirement living sector. And the retirement living sector, again, is a very broad sector. And it covers everything from recent retirees looking for a place to live with other people of the same age, with a similar mindset. It's kind of like student halls, but for older people, but everyone has their own independent flat or apartment. But on site you have food and other, sorry. All right. On site, you have different services such as physiotherapists, social groups, social clubs, catering facilities. for people who are incredibly independent. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have retirement living services, which are called extra care services, which are on the boundary of a care home, where people are in these settings but having high levels of care and support come into their flat or apartment daily, or at least regularly, to maintain their health and independence. What's interesting is that the individuals who now live in extra care would have likely been the individuals in a care home years ago. And part of the reason for that is that there isn't the capacity within care homes. And so as a result, more people who would have naturally been in a care home 10 years ago are living independently and having domiciliary care, or living in retirement setting and and being provided with in-house care and support. Also want to highlight that this presentation and Neil Eastwood's presentation will be emailed out tomorrow morning, and a video has been taken of the entire webinar, and that will be put onto YouTube so you can access it as well. So to look at the sector and how it's fragmented, if we look at care homes, domiciliary and retirement settings, there are approximately 20,000 care homes in England, which make up about just over 400,000 care home beds. And if you look at this by group, so many, not the majority, but many care homes are part of a medium to large group. And a group some examples would be Barchester or Bupa or HC1s. These are the really, or Four Seasons. These are the really large conglomerate care groups that have multiple care homes that sit within the organisation. So for the 562 medium to large care groups in England, there are about 8,500 homes that sit within these medium to large groups. The average number is about 18, and if you look at the breakdown, for the groups that have between 5 and 10 care homes, which is the large proportion, there's about 350, whereas the mega groups, the really large groups that have 40 or more care homes, there's only about 36 of these really big mega groups. But if you look at the next number below that, the majority of care homes are either in very small groups or independent care homes. This is the vast majority of the sector. And so it's important to recognise that there is a need for small groups and individual groups, as well as the higher profile larger groups. The reason why it's important is because the larger groups will have the infrastructure to have specialist members of staff for recruitment, retention, specialist technical advisors, whereas in the small groups, the independent groups, the majority of this responsibility sits with the care home manager, which these are these superhumans that have to have multiple roles and multiple skills and multiple abilities to do with everything. And this is part of the reason why things like staff recruitment and retention is often dropped, because as a care home manager, they're focused on the care needs and delivery of care, and yet they may not always be as aware or focused on the needs for retention and recruitment of their staff. So within domiciliary care providers, there are, in terms of users in the UK, there are about 875,000 users. That's kind of more than double the number of care home users at any one time. And within retirement settings, about 5% of the 65 plus population living in a retirement setting in the UK. There's about 12 million older adults, and I'm classing older adults and anyone over 65 in the UK. And there's going to be 2.5 million more older adults in the next decade. And it's retirement settings that are expected to explode in the next few years. To put into context, 5% of the UK population at the moment of this age group is about 600,000 individuals. But compare that to the USA, where actually there is between 14 to 15% of the over 65 living in retirement settings, and the USA is a population roughly 3 times the size of the UK. And so there's a real big opportunity for this sector to grow, and is expected to hit the same trend as the US. Look at the bottom corner here, look at the entire care sector on the whole at the moment. There's a total use of about 1.9 million individuals split between care homes, domiciliary care and retirement care settings. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is, if you look here in the middle, in the second from left bottom, in about a decade time, there'll be 2.4 million people who are 85 plus. That is a number far bigger than the total users in the current services. And we're making a big assumption that people 85 plus need some form of care or support, but they are the vast majority of people within the care sector. So what the challenge is, there was already a shortfall of about 300,000 care home beds in 2018. Looking at pipeline anticipated demand, there are about 7,000 more care home beds that are needed every year for the next decade. And at the moment, care homes are not being built fast enough to supply that number of beds. And looking at the number of beds in the UK, because of closure of the care homes and the way services have changed, there's been a loss of about 21,000 care home beds in the UK, roughly about 5,000 a year over the past 4 years. Why is this a problem? Well, council spending on social care is falling in real terms. And councils are supporting fewer people 65 plus to provide them with a form of social care. And yet, as everyone's very much aware, the UK population for 65 plus is rapidly increasing. It's the fastest growing part of the UK population. So back to the bottles, we know there's an increasing population. We know more people are going to be 85 plus. Already 2 in 3 hospital beds are being filled by someone who is 65 plus because more people of that age group have a long-term health condition, diabetes, coronary health disease. And yet the future demand in around 7 to 8 years for social care, the future demand is around £23 billion, which isn't there at the moment. So these are some of the big challenges. When it comes beyond that, we're looking at any one time, there's about 80,000 vacancies within the social care sector, and about 3,000 of those are the care home manager jobs, these individuals who pull and hold care homes together. There's the worry over Brexit and how that may affect staffing from the EU and for the rest of the world. And Neil will give you a bit more insight on that in a minute. And so as a sector, it's become increasingly reliant on agency staff, members of staff who come in to cover for individuals who are sick or cover for shortages in the care home. This cost of agency staff is huge for any care home and for the sector on the whole. And as a result is meaning that a huge proportion of the budget of a care home is going towards covering the cost of these agency staff, and as a result affecting care flow, and a reason for a fair few care homes to actually close because of cash flow problems. The national living wage coming in a couple of years' time means there's going to be an additional £600 million cost the sector. And it's just to highlight that these sectors are broad, but more importantly, they affect all care homes, from the large multi-care home groups down to the individual care homes. These are problems facing the entire sector. And what's needed are solutions that can be offered to an entire sector, and that's part of the reason why we created this. The larger providers, they've got the funds and ability to start to invest in solutions for the problems they're facing. They have the members of staff that they can look into recruitment or look into make sure they improve the continuity of the health services with their care homes. But the problem is that the demands on the care sector are so great. If these problems are not solved, the entire sector will implode. If that happens, it means that the care services for older people is just going to dissipate, and we're going to be left in the situation as a country not knowing where to turn. And that's why it's so important that we address this now. And again, one of the reasons why the Cabinet Office looked to back us, because they recognise the great problems on the horizon. So why do we look at the Care Innovation Challenge? And was our innovation accelerators and incubators a good idea? Well, they're not always a good idea, but they are a good idea based on Nesta, who are the National Endowment for Science, Technology and Art. When programs look at specific innovation with a strong network for a defined area problem and specific mentoring and knowledge that creates an opportunity for organic acceleration. And that's the reason we pulled the team that we have to run this together. And we believe we hit all those elements, which means that the Care Innovation Challenge has got one of the best opportunities to look at providing solutions for the sector. To run through that, it means we've been out to speak with the largest care sector organisations, and they've offered to us their biggest and most costly challenges. Care sector challenges means that there is an existing market for the high quality solutions, which we're looking to work with you to create. For each of these challenges, there is a monetary cost to each one of them, which means that there's a monetary cost to have a challenge. To solve a challenge, there is the opportunity for an organisation to pay for that, and that's where suddenly we can start to create solutions to problems, but also sustainable businesses off the back of that. So then we had the Care Innovation Challenge, and it's about bringing you people, creative, capable, and multidisciplinary teams into the challenge, where we're providing sector-specific mentoring support, access to funding, investment, and access to the market that they hope to now create new scalable solutions for the entire sector. So when we went out to executive directors and CEOs of some of the largest care organisations in the UK, they came back to us with their biggest challenges they're worried about at this very moment, but also in the 12 months ahead. And in order of problem and concern was poor media and public perception, staff recruitment, staff retention, staff health and wellbeing and sick leave, information management, and by that is around the residents who live in care home, how to manage their information and about their medication, their care needs, stuff like that. The quality of life for older people living in these settings, the quality of the care being provided in these settings, to have up-to-date knowledge of how the sector regulator, CQC, is changing and how compliance is changing, how to keep up to date with technology as technology accelerates so fast for a sector which has limited amounts of technology when you compare it to the health sector, and the reliability of working with these community care services, working with GPs and auxiliary health professionals such as occupational therapists and physiotherapists, how to improve that relationship with these services to work with care homes. Just to give you an idea of problems with perception of the care home, the perception of social care is so much worse than the NHS. It's so often that we'll hear bad news stories in the media every week, every month, and it means that people's view of the care sector, the view of care homes is really poor on the whole. But perception can change. Perception can be really effectively changed. And McDonald's is a great example of this, how McDonald's have changed the perception of what fast food is, that actually fast food can be healthy, at least according to McDonald's. But more importantly, from a recruiter point of view, McDonald's is now seen as a very valuable part of a CV if you've worked for McDonald's. Whereas 10 years ago, you went to McDonald's if you had no other opportunities in life. Whereas they've created this infrastructure to make sure that people who apply to McDonald's have to have much more rigorous standards, but also the training and the level of respect that McDonald's employees have means that the perception of McDonald's as an employer has improved dramatically. It means that the same opportunity can happen with the care sector, but it needs to be targeted as a sector-wide challenge rather than the individual organisation. To look at sick leave and employee health, on average within the care sector, there's about 10.5 days taken per employee on average. But looking at the NHS, it's roughly about 15 days on average. For the NHS, it's calculated this costs about £1 billion each year on sick leave. And so given there's more employees in the care sector and the number of sick days, it's probably looking at about £750 million being lost on sick leave every single year. And lost productivity. When you compare both of those numbers to the average number of sick days per UK employee, it's around 4.3 days. There is a disproportionately high number of sick days for both the care sector and the NHS compared to the average employee. There is a definite cost to all of that, and resulting in things like agency fees because agency staff need to be brought in. If there was a way to ensure that the care sector staff, their health and well-being, their motivation to be in their job place is improved, so sick leave is driven down, then there is a huge solution there, which means that there is potentially a very big business there as well. When we look at quality of life and cost of cares, one of the main reason for older people over 65 to die from an accident is through falling over. Hip fractures are a huge problem for people over 65 for multiple reasons. But the moment someone has a hip fracture, if you look at these core events in these graphs here, that's when someone has a hip fracture. It means they go into hospital. But the moment after that, the likelihood of someone either dying, contracting a disease or an illness, or more importantly, losing their independence. So often people in community settings, the reason there's such a high spike in the cost of care is because from a community setting, someone has suddenly lost their independence and can no longer care for themselves. But there is not only the individual cost to that and the local and the family cost and local community cost of that, but there is definitely a monetary cost to both domiciliary care and care homes to provide additional support for people after they return back into their care home or back into a home after they fracture their hip, and it's something that we need to explore and understand how to prevent that, but also how to make sure that we can take services to people in care homes in their home to improve that recovery, but also to prevent it as well. It's important to recognise that even though the care sector has been quite slow to adopt tech, it's very much aware that tech is really important because of the challenges it's facing. The recruitment gap is so big that care sectors need to figure out ways to be more intelligent and smarter, and how to deliver similar services but with fewer people. And it's the highlight that the Care Innovation Challenge isn't about tech, it's not tech focused, but many of the scalable solutions currently of looking at the sectors are tech orientated. And if you are coming without a tech background, that's no problem at all. I'm an osteopath, I'm a healthcare professional, and yet Fluid Motion runs purely on artificial intelligence and tech. I've taken my knowledge, my experience, and my passion, and been able to combine that with other experts and create a solution that's built around tech. So it's not to be worried if you don't have a tech background that you cannot identify tech solutions. So the goal of the Care Innovation Challenge, before I hand over to Neil, is to bring creative, highly capable and driven people into the sector to improve the image of the care sector, generate new ideas that become prototypes with the potential to be formed into sustainable and impactful businesses, solve challenges facing the care sector as a whole, improve access, provision and quality of care. And now I'm going to hand over to Neil Eastwood, who is the author of Saving Social Care.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everybody. Let me just fire this up. I'll see if I can start my video now. Oh, no, maybe I can't. Okay, no problem. It's more important to see the slides. So, hi, everybody. Just going to give you a little bit of introduction about me. I am kind of a one-trick pony, really, as far as recruitment and retention of care workers is concerned. So, my backstory is that I left healthcare where, as Ben has said, everything was lovely, and then accidentally took a job in a domiciliary care agency, a national one with 10,000 care workers, because it had healthcare in the title, and they were offering me $5,000 more, and I didn't really pay attention. So I was rather shocked that in the first week we had the figures back for the year saying we lost 97% of our 10,000 care workers had walked off in a huff in that last 12 months. So we were perpetually recruiting and people were leaving as fast as we recruited them. And I thought we simply can't carry on. There has to be something different. And that got me then looking at this whole problem of recruitment and retention. And you don't have to look at this problem yourselves. As Ben has said, there are others on the list, but this comes out top usually, is top in this poll, and is getting worse and worse. So I think it's something well worth looking at. And if you took a trip into the sector and went into a dom care agency or a care home, and what sort of symptoms would you see that registered managers and recruiters and the owners and all of these businesses are facing? And it's a combination really of declining applicant quality, poor quality applicants in the first place now, and declining quality. And I'll explain some reasons for that in a minute. But they're spending more and more money, often on Indeed and internet job boards, to get fewer and fewer applicants. So they can sense things are sliding away from them. As I mentioned, many of them suffer from high staff turnover. So they really have to recruit to replace, simply to stand still. And of course, there's the growth of demand, which Ben has very well explained earlier. And when you look at their website careers pages, often we're seeing very high bounce rates and people starting an online application form and then dropping out, very high dropout rates, in the 90% often. So something's going wrong, both in terms of finding good people, attracting them, and also managing them through this sort of candidate experience. We're typically running now in the sector at about 50% no-show. So if you're a manager and you've set aside some time for interviews, you're probably only going to get half of those people turning up. And that creates desperation, so people will then just take whoever's turned up. So that's a problem. And then, of course, we've got a huge amount of staff loss in the first few weeks of employment. And there are a whole range of reasons for that, but that's endemic in the industry. And of course, we've got this staff turnover rising year on year. It's probably worst in domiciliary care, because people have to get in the car, get out of the car, find a parking space, keep, 15-minute calls. It's really quite a brutal job to do, but equally it's bad and getting bad in the care home and residential settings as well. So, oh dear, what are we going to do about it? Well, first of all, of course, it's costing money. Now, part of the challenge is often owners and managers don't appreciate the full cost. So I would say to recruit and retain between 1,400 skills for care, say a bigger figure, 3,000 odd. So there's a lot of money per person if you think of the high volume of these workers that need to be found. And then there's an opportunity cost. Ben alluded to agency fees. Some of the larger players are paying millions and millions of pounds in agency fees purely because they have to have a staff ratio and they can't find enough staff to fill the homes. But in home care, you don't really use an agency, can't afford to, so it's lost revenue. And it's people who need care going without care are the big impacts there. So if you look at the macro issues that are affecting the sector, things perhaps that an individual care business has limited control over, there's changing society, technology actually, which we're talking about as potentially rescuing us from all of this, or certainly helping us. Technology is causing a problem on the other side because younger people, particularly, much more familiar with Snapchat and instant gratification and a few seconds of conversation, not going out and meeting the neighbours anymore, not sitting down for dinner, and this is all doesn't get people into the practice of long-term relationships with their communities, disengaging people from the community, and that is creating a problem attracting younger people into the sector. The image of care work, again, Ben alluded to this, it's a bit of a nightmare. The social care sector is really a Cinderella. And when you consider the NHS, can gamble all their money away, sleep around, and in the morning they're forgiven, social care, one fart in bed and you're never forgiven. So the problem is partly it's a private sector, it's independent, it's not a single entity with a brand like the NHS. So social care really struggles with its brand image, even though it's bigger and doing, I would argue, a more important job unless you're bleeding than the NHS. We've also got competition for workers, of course. Many of my clients are petrified when Aldi and Lidl set up next door, thinking they're going to lose their staff. Those guys can pay £9, £10, £11 an hour. And if you've got council funding, you simply can't meet that. You can't compete on funding, on pay. But there are other things I think we can do to sell the job. So that's an issue, competition for workers. And of course, Brexit. Brexit's very interesting, what's happening at the moment. Initially, we saw when the announcement happened in the southeast that there were perhaps a few percent of staff leaving. They were people feeling, made to feel unwelcome or felt they did. The economies of European countries where perhaps some of these people came from are getting better as well. So there's a pull as well as a push factor. But we are seeing, interestingly now, stories of EU workers staying put because they want to register the fact that this entity, this employer, saw them and they were with them from a certain date in the past. So all this uncertainty about when you're going to be, at what point you'll be unwelcome and pushed out, that's having an interesting effect both ways. But Brexit's making a mess of things, obviously, and we depend, particularly in London. If any of you were on the call from London and the southeast, then that's a very high minority of care workers do come from overseas countries. So we've also got this challenge because of the fragmentation, and as Ben explained, with this, many small single sites or a couple of 3 care homes or independent home care agencies, then you sort of end up quite insular. You end up trying to do the same thing everyone else is doing independently without this sort of universal guiding hand that the NHS might have. And you're feeling really like you won't want to talk to anyone else in your sector locally because they're going to steal your staff or are looking for the same sorts of stuff. So people are very isolated and probably running things pretty inefficiently. Talking about inefficiency, then what the sector has done since the early 2000s is latched on to internet job boards. They are far too busy to go and find any other ways of finding staff in the community. I'm going to rely on internet job boards. Internet job boards, just to show you on this little chart, Along the bottom axis here, I believe that's the y-axis, this is the journey of an applicant through a recruiter, managing them all the way to becoming a care worker at the tip of the arrow at the bottom there. The hatched line is when they become an employee, and you can see applications coming through. So what would happen, let me walk you through with internet job boards. Typically, if you had 100 applicants from an internet job board, you would try and contact them and then find that an awful lot of them didn't know where you were, didn't know where your county was, you couldn't reach them. And you invite some to interview, but of course you only get 50% of those turning up. And then you try and make a job offer to the ones you thought were half decent, and then they disappear, and you end up often with less than 1% making it through from those initial applications. So all sorts of effort that you have to go through, and I'll explain a little bit later in terms of paperwork and hassle just to manage them through the process. If you look at something like refer a friend, of course, you end up with you start with a very small percentage of the base you might have done from internet job boards. But what happens with them, very interestingly, is because there's been a referral, there's a connection with the company, someone has picked them as a caring person, you find that the ratio is much more effective when you end up with those who stay 12 months. So not all sources are equal when you're recruiting care staff. We're looking for traits that are what I call off CV. They don't exist on a CV often. The fact that someone's cared for a loved one, the fact that they are a compassionate person, they're empathetic or whatever, you can't see that from an application. So it's a very interesting challenge how you find them. So I've already mentioned this candidate process, the recruitment process, and the candidate experience is awful as a general rule in social care compared to the likes of McDonald's and retail and hospitality and all these other substitute sectors. They're slick. They respond to you. They smile. You feel welcome when you come in for an interview. They're pretty organised. They know how important candidates are. Often in social care, we're rushing around dealing with the latest crisis. Busy managers struggling to respond. If there's something worth dumping and leaving till later, it's that inbox full of applications. Let's deal with the client crisis or whatever. So these are busy managers. Often we don't have a recruiter, dedicated recruiter. We're trying to do everything in one go. And we're looking for people, what is a perfect care worker? Well, or support worker. Well, we're looking for compassion, loyalty, empathy, reliability, honesty, maturity. We really want people with a calling. All of that stuff is, really hard to find. So here's some clues for you, just based on all of my years of obsessing about this and lifting up rocks around the world to see what's going on. And this is just an example of how long people stay. That's on the x-axis, the tenure, and over a year in social care is a long service award, by the way. And then this is looking at their age range. 15 or so, 16 really is the earliest we could get them, all the way through beyond 65 actually. And you can see as a broad rule, the older you are, the more likely you are to stay a long time. So that means older people are interesting and often not targeted with recruitment. So more mature people over 50, interesting group. How can we find them? How can we engage them? Is a valuable thing to bear in mind. Another thing is that everybody pretty much relies on a mobile phone. The penetration and usage of mobile phones, either for work or just anyway, because these people are rushing around, very, very high. So I think mobile apps, hardly any you come across in social care, big opportunity to come up with some kind of mobile app that will support. And I'll share a few ideas with you in a second. Employee referrals, also really interesting, very powerful. I'd say they're the number one source of candidates, although most employers in social care don't run it properly and end up with a few percent of their starters. They should be, and where we've worked with providers, 35%, 40% of your entire recruitment can come from word of mouth from employees recommending others. And that's a really high quality source which is underutilized. So another opportunity potentially around employee referrals, and can we use the mobile phone in that way? I don't know. If you looked at what your pie chart should be for recruitment, then I would say, I recommend to my clients, I've written about in the book broadly, we need to do more on employee and other networks, applicants and ex-employees and people who visit us and suppliers and trustees. All these people can be looking on our behalf for good quality staff. We need to find ways of firing up all those tentacles into the into the community around us. As a general rule, most care staff travel about 6 miles, no more, if they're coming into a care setting. Obviously, dom care will travel a little bit further, about 20 miles a day. So anyway, Facebook, very exciting, but not used properly. But Facebook is really growing. If you saw the news today in The Guardian, you will notice that Facebook is growing older. So as the mums come on and the older people come on and granny and whatever, then the kids are leaving in disgust and don't want them to see what's going on. So what we've got is quite an interesting, Facebook is my favourite social media for recruitment for this sector. And then there's community outreach. We need to build a brand. We need to compete with the NHS, so we need to get out there somehow. So are there any opportunities? Can we use technology to reach out into the community somehow to build our brand online, offline, in the local community? And then I would still be doing job boards because, that's a flow of active job seekers who are putting their hand up saying they want to work in some cases. So that's the sort of picture of what I would be doing. In terms of opportunities for you guys, if you've got an idea already, fantastic. If not, here's a few ideas from me. I think I mentioned already, enabling employee referrals, really interesting opportunity, I think. Can we do better? Can we make that sing? Can we bring in more that way? Also looking at the candidate management process. So there are applicant tracking systems. There's about 170 of them on the market. None of them are really focused on social care apart from one or two. And how can we find ways of responding to people faster, to keeping them informed, to processing them more efficiently, to giving them the feedback that they're used to getting in society every other app gives them. So that's another area of interest. Some way of finding more applicants, obviously the more quality. How can we get out into the community? Paperwork is a nightmare in recruitment. For example, application form, the DBS form, that's sort of police checks, working time directives, availability forms, declaration forms of all sorts, use of mobile phone, contracts. There's a massive pile of paperwork. It's a mess. Can we do something with all of that paper? Can we simplify it? Could we use digital signatures? How can we make it easier for everybody? And I think, around the 6 mile radius around the community around us, that has the secret. That is where all our staff are coming from, unless we're shipping them into the EU. And I think Brexit means they're going the other way at the moment. There's got to be an opportunity there as well. So that's it from me. We'll be taking any questions in a bit. But if you would like to get a copy of the book, my book, Saving Social Care, then you can find it on Amazon and you can get it as a Kindle or as a digital copy immediately. That has lots more ideas. So if you're looking at recruitment and retention, then I would recommend a browse through that. I'm on Twitter as well. But if you want to reach me or the guys, then the email address there is the one to get. So I will hand you back to Ben. And thanks for your time and look forward to seeing you next Saturday.
Thank you very much, Neil. That was brilliant. The reason we got in touch with Neil was because the majority of care organisations highlighted that the biggest challenges they were facing was in recruitment and retention. And fundamentally, if that problem is solved, a lot of the problems start to dissipate. Is a really huge problem and is one that we need to identify a solution for the entire sector. I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen once more. So last part of the presentation tonight is just to go through some of the hospitality information around the weekend. So this weekend is in Wimbledon. We're going to be open from 8:30 for breakfast. We'll have breakfast available all morning. You need to be at Wimbledon at the address in Wimbledon Village by 9:15 at the very latest to do registration. We will be starting at 9:30 and we'll be pushing through for the entire day there. It's a really packed day. We're going to start with introducing people to the care sector again, and introducing you all to each other. And we're going to jump straight into the Idea Labs. We have some presentation from Karen, who are a tech organisation working in the sector and looking to improve the paperwork within the care organisations. The whole point of the Idea Lab is that if you have an idea already, fantastic. But if you don't, that's no problem at all. That's the whole point of this morning, is that Neil has plenty of ideas, as do we as a team, and we're here to support you to mould ideas, but also to speak to each other. We want you to come as teams and as individuals, but to look at the potential as merging into new teams, or pulling pairs together because you've got a similar idea. At the end of the Idea Lab 2, we want you to present very briefly about what your ideas are, what you're going to run with for the rest of the weekend. And over lunch, it gives the opportunity for you all to look if you have similar ideas to other people, if you want to collaborate, or if you actually potentially would like to separate and work with other people. We're very much open and up on that. We want to work with the best teams and groups you think are suitable with the right skill mix and the right drive. After that, once we have your ideas by lunchtime, it's about looking at, does that idea have legs? Could it become a business? Is there potential for it to identify a market, identify a problem, therefore to have organizations fund that concept? And then we're going to finish day one giving pitching examples. All of us, the co-founders, are going to pitch to you with the organisation we work for, or the organisation we've built in the past. We're going to support you on pitch writing. And at the very end of the day, you're each going to give, as a team, a quick 3-minute elevator pitch. And the purpose of that is to concrete what you've achieved in day ones, but also before the Care Innovation Challenge dinner, so you each know what everyone is working on, what every team is working on, as a talking point for the evening, but also to look at, to say something that's a really cool idea. I'd like to talk about that more, because there's no reason by the end of day 2 you might want to work with other teams with other ideas. And after the Care Innovation Challenge dinner, it's about a 5-minute walk from where the Care Innovation Challenge is taking place, and there'll be food for all, drinks afterwards, to get to know each other, everyone a bit more. On the Sunday, we'll start at 9 AM. We're providing breakfast as same as on the Saturday. A quick recap of everything that happened on day 1. And then we're looking at how we bring it to life, how we create storyboards, how we prototype ideas, looking at very basic logos, and the same in bring it to life too, how we sort of formalize what is that value proposition, what is the purpose of that prototype, what is the problem it's trying to solve. After that, we would have, by lunchtime, the idea that we would have formalised your ideas, formalised the ideas you'd like to take, you were going to take forward to pitching. We're then going into pitch planning, and that will then lead into what the end of the day presentations will be. As teams, you will each be pitching to a group of judges, and that will then be the deciding point of the end of the weekend of the 5 teams that will be presented with the awards and funding, and the invitation to go on to the Care Innovation Challenge final. And so for those 5 teams, they will each be given a £500 project budget, £100 each as a personal prize, and over the next 4 weeks following the Care Innovation Challenge weekend, that we have a dedicated mentor to trial, test, provide introductions, provide feedback and ideas on how to develop that idea. The real prize for those 5 teams is the invitation itself, because the great thing is that the Care Innovation Challenge final will then be taking part on Monday the 19th of March. The date has changed by 2 days, and the reason for that is the Cabinet Office isn't open on the Saturday, so they can't host it. But we feel very validated that the Cabinet Office are backing us, and they're happy to host the final challenges in the centre of London. And the opportunity then will be that all 5 teams that come through, every team member will have individual interviews that will be conducted by the 4 of us, and then you'll go on to be pitching some very high-profile individuals, CEOs from the care sector, officials from the CQC, and investors as well. And this is where the real opportunity is that there will be investment opportunities there, opportunities for contracts direct with care home CEOs and care sector CEOs, huge publicity. We're going to get the Guardian down to cover the event. And again, a real big opportunity for networking, because some of the biggest people in the entire sector will be in that room for the lunch afterwards. And that's it. That's in the presentation. And so now, if you want to ask any Q&As, there is a Q&A box on your Zoom login. You can type them in there. Or if you want, you can send an email to the hello@careinnovationchallenge.com email address. And if nothing else, you're very welcome to leave now. You will receive these presentations by tomorrow morning, both the presentation that I've been using and also Neil's, and the video of this evening's webinar will be on YouTube by tomorrow morning as well. But otherwise, you're very free to go. But what we want to do now is to think about the challenges that we've put in front of you. start to plan over the next few days. Plan over the next few days what area of challenge you'd like to take on. That might be a pre-existing idea, or you just have a bit of an interest in one of the areas, and there's the opportunity for you now to do a bit of digging, a little bit of research, so you come better informed to the weekend, so you're ready to go straight away. If nothing else, we will, the three of us here, and Ben Allen, who is currently up north, will see you on Saturday morning for breakfast, and we will take it from there. If not, thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of the evening.